Well, welcome. My name is Peter Constantino. I am the business manager for NSFA. I welcome you to this discussion on the reopening of our schools and the role that foundations play. This event is strictly a discussion. I welcome you all to this discussion, and this is our third one. So, and it's been over 150 people have registered for this event. So clearly it is an important discussion to have. And I'm pleased to introduce to you our moderator, Gail Rothman, who is chair of the Industry Leadership Council. And I'm going to let her give a little bit about her background. She'll start us off. Again, this is a discussion, so please, there's no question that we don't want to hear, no suggestion that shouldn't be shared. So Gail, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Great to see you all. As Peter said, this is our third. They asked would I moderate one discussion, and so many people signed up. They opened a second, which I said, sure, and then they opened a third. So I'm trying to, perk back up because afternoon, it's 3 o'clock in Georgia right now, getting a little gray outside, but I am so thrilled to see a lot of faces, and then some of you who are not on camera, and so glad you joined us today. We have been talking about a lot of different things related to opening schools and how foundations can support districts. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. The district is City Schools of Decatur is our school district, and my foundation, it supports the children and youth of our community. And it's about 5,000 students in our district with about a 20 to 30% socioeconomic need population. I always start by saying you all represent similar and very different districts in size, in budget, in scope. I have been doing this work for 11 years now at our foundation. I was the first hire and the lonely girl in the tiny office with one volunteer. So if you are that person who is the sole voice at your foundation, or you're a volunteer, I have been there. If you are somebody who now is lucky enough to work with great team members as part of your staff, that's where I am now. So I have had a lot of a variety of different budget sizes and different organizational sizes. Right now, I'm just going to share a couple of things that we're doing just to give one example of one community's efforts and hopefully to spur some discussions. We've had two sessions. One of the sessions, we had a lot of 15 plus people contributing to the conversation. Another session, there were more listeners and fewer people who kind of wanted to throw out ideas or ask questions. All are fine and all are welcome. Some of you may be brand new, but we also want you to feel, if you're brand new, but you have a question or a creative idea, please, you don't have to have any years of experience to share your great brains with us. Just a little intro. We're facing, ridiculous times, and if you're in this job, it's because you're a problem solver and you're a solution-oriented person. I don't even have to know you to know that that's true. I just know that about our industry. You don't get into this job if you're not trying to find solutions for kids. We find ourselves in a time where the best solutions are still kind of crappy. And that is just a fact. And so if you're a problem solver, it's a frustrating time because there are no good answers to opening schools. There are no good answers to virtual learning. And so we're just all doing the best we can. I think I have talked to many of you over the past bunch of months in a few other virtual conversations and some smaller group conversations that I just set up to reach out to people. And really, I believe we are, education foundations are well positioned to make a huge impact. We always are. I'm a believer in foundations and the impact they have. Now more than ever, I feel like we are positioned across our country to really do some heavy lifting. And so that we hope you leave this feeling like you are not alone. These are your people, so make connections with your people. Reach out to me, reach out to Peter, the NSFA team. And if you're not a member, you don't have to be a member of NSFA to take advantage of all of this good stuff. But, just as if you listen to NPR, they ask you to support it so it can stay strong and be here. We want to make sure NSFA has support. So do consider, if it gives you worthwhile information, do consider learning more about jumping into this great organization. Our district basically outlined a 5-step plan to address the COVID situation. We kept it vague at first because we didn't know what things were going to look like. And as we've moved through, we have given the community more information. I say that to say, don't overpromise when you start talking about your initiatives, because at least in our community, there's a very strong Facebook presence, and you will get skewered if you overpromise and underdeliver. We identified with our district 5 areas. I'm going to just throw those out there. If there is interest, I can share more, or other people can latch on and share what they're doing in those areas or other areas. Right now, the areas are childcare, and that is, we are providing a list of resources of spots that are available. We are all virtual coming up next week. So we put together a list of places where people could find childcare and learning lounges. And we're also providing some financial assistance to families. That's new for us. It's a response to COVID. Second area is tutoring. We've started a virtual tutoring program. It hasn't actually started yet, but we're putting the pieces in place. We already had a mentoring program, and we're going to expand on that. That's the third area. The fourth area is parent resources. For that, we're partnering with our PTAs and our Decatur Parent Network group. So they will probably host most of those, but we will partner to support them financially if needed, or get the word out. And the fifth area, behavioral health, social emotional learning, you might call it in your district. We already have been supporting that for many years, but we know we're going to have to double down given all of the mental health challenges that we know our kids are going to face from this trauma and all the different traumas that make up this COVID landscape. So again, I will start with that. I will also, just because it hot off the presses and it came up in the other groups, I will mention that since we couldn't do virtual opening, we usually pay for lunch for all of our teachers. That's about $6,000 in hot dogs, which I always like to make jokes about. And this year, unfortunately, we couldn't do our big opening day lunch. So we took that money and we bought just cloth face masks for every employee in the district, not to replace PPE and other things, but really just as we're thinking about you, and we branded them, and we just got them. And so you might not be able to see, but it says "for our kids, for each other," and then our logo. And again, it's just a little way to sort of remind them, like, we see you and we know you're stressed, and we're thinking of you and want you to stay safe. So those are just a couple of things that we're working on. Please feel free, do raise your hand or your little emoji. Also, if you just rather not talk, you can throw all your questions in the chat, and then we'll open it up that way. But would love to hear if you're working on any of these 5 areas, or if you've been asked by your district to do completely other initiatives. We'd love to hear about that as well.
And you should have seen pop up on your screen a poll about the 5 areas, but again, we're not limiting the discussion to those 5. I also want to make sure that you know that anything that goes in the chat log in terms of links or links to website or documents and things of that nature, or ideas, will all be made available to you, again, within a couple of days following this program. So let's, I guess, start with PPE at least first, and we'll wait for the poll responses for those 5 areas. Is anyone doing anything with PPE with their district, or have they been asked at all by your district to assist in funding for anything of that nature? Anybody take it on as a fundraiser? Okay, I see a couple of people. Do you want to unmute yourself? And then Dale, and there was somebody else, I think, also. Forgive me. C. Clarkson. I forgot your first name, sorry.
I'm Danielle from North Penn, right outside Philadelphia. We are actually doing a North Penn Strong apparel campaign. This is our 3rd one this year. First one went towards internet access. This one goes towards Build-A-Bag for supplies for students. And with the mask, and we also have a lanyard that you could purchase with it. It's a buy one, give one. So you buy a mask and you give one to our Build-A-Bag.
That's awesome.
Someone did something similar in they buy water and they give a water bottle to the student when they go back to school at some point, because they needed to supply water to the school. So very interesting, the concept.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think Clogston, I don't know your first name, but it looked like you had also raised your hand.
About that.
There you are.
Hi. Hi, I'm with Pearland ISD. We're a suburban town outside of Houston, Texas. And we have also done a apparel spirit shirt campaign fundraiser for several years. And we are adding in the mask piece this year. So we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome.
And Danielle, in the chat, the question was it with Nordstrom's? Did you say?
No, I'm with North Penn School District, but this was a local parent that we teamed up with.
Gotcha. North Penn, outside of Philadelphia. Okay, I wasn't sure if there was a Nordstrom in there, and I knew North Penn, but I didn't want to like make things worse. So it's an afternoon. We'll just deal with it. Okay. Anyone else doing anything with respect to the PPE? It was interesting because in one of, I can't remember which session it was, but one of them, a board member actually was concerned that it was being used as a fundraiser, and the intent was to find a donor to pay for the mask and then distribute them, and then any extras could be sold with the money going right back into helping other student activities or other areas that they've been asked to help fund. Has anyone come across anything like that at all, where a board member was concerned about?
This was a pushback somebody had said, and I think it's a great moment to share with your board. So basically a school system, I said we were going to maybe sell extra masks that cost us $4 and we'll sell them for $20, not to our teachers and staff, we're giving those, but as a fundraiser. And somebody said their board member saw that as sort of profiting off of I don't know, COVID or the protection. And I really think that's a great teachable moment to talk about. It's really not profits, it's donors being able to, they get a mask and then they're giving money that goes straight back into protective gear or emergency response or food insecurity. So, again, you have to know your board and your community. If it won't resonate, obviously, you wouldn't want to do it. So I think that's important also to know what, and one way to see what does resonate in your community for us is Facebook and listservs and things like that. So I would say if you're not on those, in our town, there's about 5 that have just been created around this virtual learning stuff. And so being kind of aware of what people are saying and also what they're saying you're doing that you may or may not be doing. I've had to correct a few folks on saying that we're doing pods and we're organizing, things that we're absolutely not doing. And so I think that's just a good, keep your ear on the pulse of what's going on.
Elizabeth, you mentioned that your board is buying T-shirts. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So, when we took a close look at, first of all, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm the president of the Valley View Education Foundation in La Crescenta, California. And when we were looking at our budget, we kind of felt like we had a really good year last year, and, felt that we were in a position to be able to buy T-shirts. We really, we're a very community-driven school. I mean, like so many schools, but what really is the source of pride for many families is sort of this sense of community. And so we really felt that it was important to give back first before asking. And so we will proceed with the fundraising campaign after the school year starts. We normally actually have it at the very start of the year, but we really felt that kind of giving something first, especially because I think it would be like $7 per T-shirt. We do have only, however, like 400 students. So, because of our school size, that certainly does enable us to be able to do something like that. But we really felt like it was important to provide something first and then give families the opportunity to obviously purchase more, including, T-shirts and whatnot for adults, right? So that way too, there can be that sense of spirit and pride.
And I see, Caitlin, you did, the Aurora Public Schools Foundation did fundraising for adult meals. You served over 1.5 million meals. Where are you, Caitlin? Unmute. Come on down, the price is right.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we are a district out in Colorado, right outside of like the Denver metro area. And our community is a lot of refugee community, a lot of immigrants, you know, so they lost a lot of jobs. And really, we tried to look at what was the biggest need in our community. And our normal focus is college and career readiness in our high schools. And the district came to us and said, hey, you know, we can fund the student meals through federal dollars, but we don't want to turn anybody away. So we stood up a campaign. I would say probably we're just under 200,000 in the adult meals. But for meals in general, we have served probably, over 1.5 meals, probably more than that. And we'll continue to serve as long as our community needs it, in addition to funding our college and career readiness programs in our high schools.
That's
Wow.
awesome. That's really, I think that really speaks to being nimble and being, you know, I flexible, responsible, and creative are sort of the themes for me this year. And I think that is an amazing example of, yeah, that might not be something you would do under normal times, but heck, we're not facing normal times. And if you are positioned to be sort of,
Exactly.
if no one else can do it, then, you know, Ed Foundations, it's like, okay, well, if no one else can do it and we are positioned, so that's awesome. Very nice.
Nice work, yeah. And I'm gonna just throw a plug in here. One of the things that NSFA will be starting, I don't know if it'll be August because they're between this call and then a diversity webinar. There's lots of stuff going on, but probably September. We're gonna be reaching out to all of our foundation leader members to ask about a success story. And we're gonna be posting them on a website, because the best way to tell people what a foundation is, what we do, is to promote what we do and the success stories. So when you see those emails coming out, don't be bashful, because it'll help you in the long run to say, look what we're all trying to accomplish, especially through something like this pandemic.
That's right.
So that'll be coming probably September. If I can do it sooner, I will, but September.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what I think Elizabeth had said about you know, knowing your community of donors and what's important to them, and the, you know, giving before asking. I think that is so important. It did come up in other calls about fundraising, and several of us, you know, several people were speaking to this idea that we kind of worry about this time because, of course, millions of people are unemployed, and it has hit a lot of communities hard, and especially certain segments of our economy. But several people had commented, and myself included, that this isn't, that there is still the people who are untouched or less impacted by the COVID and the economy, and there are many who are privileged and less impacted. Those people are really wanting to do even more. And so what we're finding is, with our annual donors, we have a step up circle, which is annual donors of 1,500 up to 10,000. And we're finding that so far all of them have stayed at least at their level from last year, and the ones who can have doubled because they know we're going to lose some. We have a business structure and also individuals. And so I would just say, you know, make sure you're not missing the opportunity to go and make asks of people who may be able to do more, knowing that other people are struggling, because this is a time where we have found donors are really digging deep. And especially if you can talk a little bit about what you're funding, whether it's childcare grants that we're doing, or whether it's connectivity that Haley mentioned, and a couple others have mentioned, Chrome, you know, people providing Chromebooks. And I think it's a very personal time for fundraising. So people who are more privileged are thinking about all of the kids and families who are less privileged, the national scene, the talk about racism, all of those equity issues are really in the air. And so I do think that it is an opportunity to bring in new donors that may have never been interested in what you're doing, but the emergency work you're doing is going to really resonate with them.
And I'm looking at the chat log. There's a lot of questions where people want to know if foundations are involved in providing internet connectivity to their families. So let's open up. If one, are any of you involved in trying to raise funds for that, working with your district, and your district working to get broadband service to your students. So if you could raise your hand. Yes, okay, so Aronk HSF, I don't have first names, but
I'm Erin.
hi,
I'm Erin,
welcome.
and I'm the executive director for the Hillsborough Schools Foundation in Oregon, and we have about 20,000 students, and we were tasked in the spring by the district to raise money for a crisis fund. And we've raised about 60,000, and that included internet access using both Comcast and Verizon for their Internet Essentials program. And it cost about $40 for 6 months for students to get very, very basic codes from the companies to be able to use for internet. So they can't download apps to play with and that kind of thing. So we have started ramping that up again to get ready for the fall, and have had some success with some of our corporate donors also contributing to that. And then we've had some individuals that have donated funds for Chromebooks, but I think majority we've got that covered by the district. So we also have been raising funds in that COVID crisis fund for food pantries. So that's what we're doing.
And I think it was, is it Natasha? Sorry, oh, the chat log is really burning up right now. I think it was Natasha who was saying you were working with also on broadband service.
Yeah, so we work with Comcast, and we got an email from them that says that they're expanding their free internet. So they were doing it just for a couple of months, and they're expanding on that for students, but they're also partnering with districts over here and doing like bill sponsorship. So some foundations are taking over those bills and paying those, and it's like $10 a month or something, so that they give that discounted rate to our families that need it. But they're working on creating a way that like foundations can take on that bill. And I don't exactly know what that looks like yet, but our district, I mean, we have one-to-one technology, so we're pretty lucky there. And we handed out about 4,000 hotspots to our families, but we still have ones that don't have internet, or families that are concerned about their immigration status that aren't wanting to put their names down on paperwork. So that's a challenge that we're working through. But that's just another resource, is using Comcast for that. And I can send over, I'll see if I can find the link and post it in the chat box so that it has that information for you guys.
We had done something where we took over paying the $9.99, but this was before COVID, when we had a digital divide program where we gave out laptops and paid for internet. When we took over the paying the bill, hopefully they've improved. It was very challenging. Comcast would bill us and list the names, but then some people would move and we'd still be paying for them. So hopefully they have come up with a better way, because that is it's a great way to support families if you can take over that, because it's a pretty nominal fee per family, right. But for us, the logistics and the administration on the Comcast side were challenging.
Yeah, good to know. It would be our engagement liaisons in our family engagement department that would do that. I mean, I'm a one-person team, as many of us are, so it wouldn't be something that I would personally want to take on. So I'm just going to say, here's the money, you take it.
Yolanda, I think your hand was up.
Yes, it was. Hi.
Hi.
We are addressing all of the critical needs for open. So we're a very large district. Our district, we raise 6 figures for devices. The divide for us was connectivity. So it's really more the need for the MiFi than it was for Chromebooks. The district was providing the Chromebooks. But what the district was finding when we were just raising money for it is a difference in the devices. Some were newer than others, had different capabilities. So our district decided to redo its budget, do a supplemental budget for a couple $1 million and just take care of that issue. And so the money we raise is really for repair and, episodes that will happen because it's now in the district. But we have several campaigns going on, one for school supplies. We've always done a backpack campaign and supplied about 20,000 backpacks. We've upped that number because of the families affected by employment disruption. That's causing us to have to serve more families. We've retired the school lunch debt for farm families, and the farm number continued to rise even after kids were sent home because families were applying to get into the program as their employment was disrupted. So I just settled a bill for like $136,000 for school lunch debt, and we are relaunching to get ready for the coming year.
Yolanda,
Can you
what
say which
district?
district? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, Montgomery County Public Schools in Rockville, Maryland.
And I'm a Marylander, so thank you.
I think somebody commented in one of the other sessions about, and I think this is very much community to community, and like I think that is a perfect example. Somebody said, we're worried about becoming social service agencies. I think in some parts of our country, if you are the connector that can make stuff happen where there aren't, and it sounds like, none of us want to do programs and meet needs if we don't have to. So of course, we're always looking for partners. That's without question. But I think as you hear people talk, you will hear across the country, there are just places where there aren't safety nets, unfortunately. And so ed foundations they're feeding adults and kids. They're providing, somebody said they were paying for teachers to be able to get COVID tests. Well, in no universe would we ever think that education foundations should be paying for testing, but here we are, right? So I do think, again, if you are lucky and live in a place where there are a lot of potential partners, that's fantastic. And if you're not, I think, tell me your first name. It says Prudy Yo, so I don't know.
Yolanda.
Oh, Yolanda.
Okay. And I think Yolanda sharing that is a great example. It's like, well, if no one else is going to do it and it impacts our families, like we're going to step into that space. So that's amazing. I mean, it's very inspiring hearing what y'all are doing.
Kim, I think your hand was up. Just unmute. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. I just wanted to share, I'm Kim Lund. I'm with the Bellingham Public Schools Foundation up in Bellingham, Washington. And we've definitely seen our requests to support basic needs grow. It's been a focus of our organization and foundation's work for the last few years. Obviously, it's just grown enormously in response to COVID. And to Gail's point, we paid out close to $30,000 in rent supports for families, mostly for undocumented families that were unable to get unemployment or other agency assistance. And it was uncomfortable stepping into that role. It's something we'd never done before. We didn't even necessarily advertise that we were able to provide these supports. But what we found is that our family engagement and ELL teams really have spent years of trust building and doing deep relationship work with this community. And they were just not able to step into supports from other agencies to do rent supports right now. And so we were uniquely positioned to just say yes to this need and stabilize these families in housing. And so we're just kind of taking the leap into what do we need to do to, remove roadblocks and stabilize families and children right now.
Kim, if you'd be willing to, I put a link from my website. So we did the same. We have an emergency fund. A lot of it went to food insecurity. So we provided $50 Kroger gift cards to supplement for families who weren't getting their lunch and breakfast at school. But we also had a rental assistance program, which same thing is sort of, we pulled together partners. So one of the beauties of Silver Lining, you find partners you didn't know existed. We found out that St. Vincent de Paul in our community already had people to vet and knew how to vet people for rental assistance, which of course as education people, we didn't know how to do, but they were going to run out of money. So we partner and they vet. If we get a request, it goes to them. They do the vetting and ask the right questions. And then if they need supplemental funds, they can come to us for the funding part. But that's a good example of like, ooh, we want to help, but like, we don't know anything about the housing world. And so, Kim, if you had resources on your website or anywhere that you'd be willing to share, if you can just add them to the chat, that would be great.
Definitely. I'll just add on really quickly. One of the ways that we've been supporting families is with a program that we call our Yes Cards. And it's flexible micro grants of up to $100 for any student. And it's available to every teacher in the district. It takes them like 1 minute to apply on the foundation's website. Typically, it's like a Kroger or Winco gift card. But it can be anything. It can be a prescription support. It can be transportation assistance. It can be shoes, eyeglasses, so they don't have to wait 6 weeks for DHS, to pay for it, whatever it is. And so the Yes Card program really resonates with donors because it's just so simple. It's been a huge fundraising success for us. And the best part of that program is because it's an educator observing a need in a student, like if a student shares that they're hungry when they go home, and they're able to give them this card, it's an act of love. It helps that educator see and meet that need of a student. And it's such a tangible way for our educators to love our children. And it's been a huge success. So I just, Yes Cards. And we don't record any receipts or tracking. It's trust-based philanthropy totally. So
can you put I definitely want to follow up with you. So selfishly, can you put your email in the chat and also say what foundation you are again?
Yeah, Bellingham Public Schools Foundation in Washington State. Yep, I'll put that in the chat here.
And on the link that I put, we have a referral form. So if you can refer your own family for basic needs for food or rental, but you can also refer, there's a separate form that's like if you know a neighbor or if you're a school counselor and you know a family, you can also refer somebody to the program and we'll follow up. I love the Yes Cards idea. That's awesome, Kim.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the poll, and it's interesting because each of the 3 groups rated these 5 areas. And again, it was just something for Gail to start the conversation off with, rated them completely differently in each session. So 72% want to hear more about behavioral health, 60% on parent resources, and then 52% was on tutoring. Just to go out of order for a moment, the one thing that we were talking about in terms of tutoring and a combination with mentoring is, and this came up in both sessions, and that is obviously, you're working with children, so you want to do the background checks, you want to take the appropriate, precautions that are necessary. But what I heard from the 2 sessions is not only working with alumni to come back and help the students, but also those who are retired. And it's an odd time to be up in age when you're secluded and locked in and you can't get out, literally. But you have a lot of experience and wisdom that you can impart on the kids. So has anyone started anything or working in terms of tutoring, mentoring, getting alumni involved, not just for fundraising, but involved in some sort of action directly for the students?
Peter, Danielle from North Penn. We're currently working with an organization right now to see how we can partner with them. They do math tutoring. I'm not sure how it's going to eventually come about, if it will come about, but also providing like a list of resources for tutoring.
Cool. No, that's
awesome.
That's
and I would say partnering. So we've already had a partnership with Mathnasium, which is a math tutoring place. They've been big supporters of one of our big events. I would suggest, I know you probably already all do this, but really leveraging your position in your community. So we pretty much always go to businesses, and even now, and he's trying to keep his business afloat. And so we say like, oh, if we push out your tutoring monthly fee, there's plenty of people in our community who are going to pay for it. And in exchange, he gives us several free spots for kids who we identify as not being able to pay. So I think leveraging the marketing that you could provide, like you do for all your events, I'm sure, and all of your other things, is a great way to partner on the tutoring piece. Our virtual tutoring is going to be a little bit more homework help, figuring out Google Meets and logins and all the things that might overwhelm a kid, and also some of our parents who either are working and just can't be there always to do that for their kid, or have language barriers. So our virtual, we are looking at recruiting senior citizens and alumni and adults in the community, and also upper high school kids, which gives them community service hours and also fulfills some other project needs they have, since they can't really do internships in the traditional way. So there are ways you can kind of connect a whole bunch of different sub-communities in your community, which again, really positions you as an organization that's not solely on just the school system, but is really, as Elizabeth had said, you know, community, like bringing the community together. So even if you're in a big place where it feels like, oh, we're not kind of a small community, I think there's a lot you could do to build networks in your community that'll just, I think, benefit kids, you know, hopefully when we get out of this wild pandemic time. And I also just that.
Oh, sorry.
So I was going to
raise your hand on that.
What we decided to do was go in the direction of mental health. And so we've partnered with a nonprofit that does mental health clubs that are student driven. And we have a plan for introducing them virtually, starting with 8th graders, because in the COVID crisis, we did have a couple of suicides by 8th graders. So our counselors came to the Ed Foundation and said they believe trauma is very much introduced to the children in that age range. So we're working with, our plan is to work with parents, students, and then we are also focusing on the highly at-risk student who is in our alternative learning program because of disciplinary issues, or they have encountered the justice system and they're coming through that process back into schools. So that's where we chose to put the mentoring effort, was more in these peer-to-peer mental health clubs.
Wow.
I'm typing a note, but if you can put your contact info, because again, about following up, maybe put mental health peer clubs in case people want to remember you're the one who said it, and then can follow up.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, that is great. Yes, Judy?
Hi, I'm Judy from Ocala, Florida, and we have a prescripted, if you will, mentoring program that we already do. It's a statewide program, and we house the Marion County version of Take Stock in Children. So we follow that statewide program. And so we have 200 low-income, at-risk high school students in our program. And since March, we've had to move all of our mentoring virtually. But one of the blessings of this has been that we've been allowed to open it up to allow more students to attend a mentoring session at one time, and to allow students to choose topics of their choice in which we could bring a guest speaker. So yesterday we had 35 students that logged on to listen to some district leaders talk about what it's going to be like when school starts and what are the expectations of students. We have had mental health counselors on. We've had a lot of students that think they want to go into the medical field. So we've had medical professionals come and talk with our students. So it's been a great opportunity for us to connect with our students in a different way. Even though each of our 200 students has a volunteer mentor that does also meet with them virtually, we've been added that group mentoring in, and it's been really, really effective for us to kind of keep tabs on our kids and to allow our students to know that we're still here for them, and to give them some kind of routine. And it's also one of the topics that students chose was after some of the riots broke out, they kind of wanted to just kind of chat and talk to some professionals about some of the things that were happening in society and some of the systemic racism. And so allowing them to choose has been really powerful, I think, for the students.
Judy, I'm going to say again, can you put in the chat, the mentoring and online and your name and your email? Because it's hard to facilitate when I'm like, oh, I want to follow up with her and with her and with her. So I'm also participating. And then the question came up of, do you do your online mentoring with Google or Zoom or some other platform?
We have been using GoToMeeting, and we're considering moving to Zoom. So we're in that thought process, and the reason that we're considering moving to Zoom is so that we can do breakout rooms, which we can do through GoToMeeting.
That's great. Thank you. That's awesome. And just put your email in there. That would be great. I know you've heard of Zoom bombs and things. I'll just share as an aside. We had a school board meeting. All that is virtual now. And because of virtual learning and all of the things being decided at our school board meetings, there were like 650 people who were on this Zoom call. And the way it was set up, apparently they didn't do the secure way. And so the very first minute, there was a Zoom bomb, racial slur that all the participants could see. And so the school system basically had to shut down the entire call, reset it up as a webinar. And so I know you're all aware of, you just have to pay attention to all of those things. And some platforms are, more secure. And so putting it out there, as I've now participated in a meeting, and that really, as you can imagine, had a real serious impact.
And I will, I'll send to you, I'll include, if I can in the next minute or so, pull some security measures that you can actually use for Zoom meetings, which is the reason why there were some issues. It was actually put out by the New Jersey, I don't know what, Department of Cybersource or Cybersecurity, of which our IT administrator is part of. And it was some simple things, like if people were showing, they wanted to show that they're on a call. Well, they did so with the information being shown, which gives the meeting ID, the password, and so forth. And that's how somebody just simply scours the web, finds this photograph, takes the number, and logs in, and boom, they take over the call. So there's very simple things that you could do to make Zoom meetings, not just the webinars, secure. And I will, Gail, if you take whatever the next conversation will be, I'll go and get that and see if I can put it in the chat log for everybody as well.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Are there topics we haven't even brought up that somebody is just thinking like, oh, we're not going to cover this? And that's really what I want to hear. We'd love for you to, especially, I know some of you are probably listening and also doing other things, but if there's anybody who has
I would love to ask about how your boards are interacting or partnering with PTAs. We have a very strong PTA presence and a good relationship. We have had, that's just historically been the case at our school, but, I think in the past, we maybe could have coordinated a little bit better with them. And so just especially around fundraising, but just, sort of, especially now in COVID, how how are you actually, I'm really curious about messaging, because PTA, has a very specific role and sort of, I think we have a little bit more bandwidth to take on other issues affecting families. So I'm curious to see how people are partnering with PTAs.
I'll give you all a chance to raise your hand, but I'll say one thing that's worked that we tried. We host a PTA Council, which is a member. Now this year we made it the president because we wanted to coordinate better. When it was in person, we'd have in-person monthly meetings with a representative from each of our schools. We did it as a give back. Like, of course, we wanted them to market our things, but they actually found learning from each other and sharing the different platforms and technologies and things they were using and treasure things. So they really got a lot from each other, but it also helped us send the message, we're not competing with you, and it helped us sort of separate. And this year, what we said to them is because we have more funding because we're just, we're a bigger organization, and a lot of them are struggling with fundraisers, and all of us are not wanting to hit up our restaurants, our bars, our bookstores. And so we're really saying to them, let's do even more partnering on funding things, because knowing that they're not going to just have as much money as they might have had in the past. But I'd be curious to hear what y'all think.
Our PTA, this is Yolanda again, Montgomery County Public Schools, Rockville, Maryland. Our PTA came to us. They felt they had the volunteer force to conduct a campaign. So we launched in partnership with our county level PTA Coordinating Council a gift card campaign for grocery and basic need gift cards. They are the volunteer force out there working their network to get the cards. We established a dedicated post office box to receive the cards. And our staffs that are in student and parent engagement, our PPWs and parent community coordinators, et cetera, are the distributors of the cards that come in. And we're also accepting money for the purchase of the cards. But the idea was really the PTA's idea, and they approached me about doing it. So I thought it was wonderful.
That is great.
Great.
This is definitely a time you want to be in collaboration and not at all in competition. So I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say we're in a similar situation with our PTAs. It's not a part of the national organization. They're parent-teacher committees, and there's one for elementary, middle school, and high school. So I always get together with the presidents of those organizations once a year, and I help, because I'm also a parent, I help manage the technology for their organizations, which they split 3 ways. And they have been talking about using like an old hockey rink in our community to have after-school space for enrichment. And we 100% will partner with them on that. And similarly, we see our PTCs as having, the volunteer force, especially at the elementary one, where the parents are sort of more excited about their kids going to school. Then you get kind of, as your kids get older, you're like, oh, when is this going to be over? So they have the volunteer force, and we have more the ability to do sort of community fundraising and messaging. And so we'll partner with them to do after school art classes and maybe some dance and maybe some, we'll see what happens. But because it's, we're going sort of younger kids are all going back initially, K-7, and then our 8 through 12 is going to go in 2 sections, 2 days a week with Wednesdays off. So.
Heather, I'm going to say, I'm so glad you said something, because I told Peter that you were going to be in this session. I said, and if people aren't talking, I'm going to call out Heather and make her
Yeah.
Heather is an NSFA board member, so you should all.
Gail froze.
Gail froze.
Gail froze. So I think Heather is a member of the board. She's also a regional rep for the Northeast on the Industry Leadership Council. Again, we will be sharing contact information so that you can continue the discussion. This is just one piece of a discussion that continues.
And if I would just want to say, I want to introduce one of my students is on our call today. Sophia, raise your hand and give it a little wave.
There we go.
For the first time this year, we've brought 2 students on to be student representatives on our board of directors. And we had so many amazing applicants, and in order to keep, so Sophia is our senior, and we have also a junior, and then we'll bring on a new junior every year. So we always have 2 kids. And, but there was so much energy around our application process with these kids that I started a student advisory committee. And so I'll be working with all of the kids who applied to kind of keep their energy going. And one of the things that I really heard loud and clear from most of our applicants was the interest in bringing anti-racist curriculum into our district. And so that's something that our Ed Foundation is definitely going to be supporting this year.
So I'm going to do 2 things. And Sophia, get ready. I was a former high school teacher, so I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm going to be putting you on the hot seat in a minute, okay? So be prepared to unmute. But I'll go to the second thing that Heather said and just make a promotion here that on August the 26th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, NSFA will be hosting a panel discussion on supporting anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion programming in the school district. It is on the website. We have not sent out any emails just because we had 3 sessions. There's Gail, she's back. We had 3 sessions today, and we wanted everybody to just be focused on the discussion that we're having today and not to detract on the promotion for that webinar. But that'll be coming up on August the 26th. So now we're going to go to Sophia. So, okay, so Gail, what you missed is Sophia, who's going to participate, and she's going to lead some of this conversation when she doesn't know it yet, is actually a student that Heather has working on a student advisory committee. So, Sophia, first thing is, what grade are you in?
I'm a rising senior this year.
Okay, so is my daughter. So that is wonderful. Congratulations. And what I would like to know, and you can answer however you want or not, what's your perspective of everything going on? You know, you've heard 50 minutes of discussion, you know, a lot of it about foundations and what we're doing to help with, you know, you and all of your peers learning in a completely different environment. But what's your perspective, or something that you, even one nugget of information you can share with the rest of us?
Well, I think that students thoroughly understand, you know, sort of the difficulty of opening up versus not opening up. Like Gail was saying at the very beginning, there's no good way for any of this to happen. Like, there is no perfect solution. Mm-hmm. And so I think that students really want to help in any way they can. I have, like Heather was saying, there are so many amazing peers of mine that applied for this position. So I know at least my community is very eager to help in any way that they can. So I think that opening up, you know, some of the mentoring positions, that I think that there would be a lot of student involvement or a lot of interest in involvement to help with mentoring or childcare after school if that's needed. So I think my point is that opening up as much communication with the student body is really, really important, and that there will be a lot of voice eager to help any way they can.
And I would, first of all, I want to thank you, because Heather probably said you'll just sit there quietly and listen to everything going on and nobody will call on you, because she didn't realize that that's what I would do. But I think what you just said, though, lends itself to something Gail and I have been promoting, in particular in the last 2 sessions, and it's appropriate now, which is we've all been working in this very comfortable box. And along came 2020, in particular March 1st, when it just went from 2 states right across to the East Coast and then swung back over the rest of America. And we find ourselves here, you know, today, 6-7 months later, and the uncertainty of what's going on. But this is a great opportunity to break yourself out of the box. And I think one of the things that Sophia just mentioned, and I was a proponent of it when I was a high school teacher, without a doubt, in New York, by the way, is getting, you know, find out, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, find out what the kids want, find out what the kids need. Chances are they'll be willing to share some more information than maybe the parents, because we know as adults, we don't like to say we need help. We don't like to always ask for help, but maybe there's something that the student or the child says to you that says, all right, I got it. I know what they need. I can read between the lines if they're not being forthwith. So I think what Sophia mentioned goes hand in glove, where Gail and I were focusing in the past about donors and reaching out to different types of donors and reaching out for those $10 and $20 contributions that could deal with the backpacks and whatever else may be needed, or those gift cards for meals, as we've talked about. But reach out to the kids, because I guarantee you they're going to be a wealth of information. And at the very least, there'll be a wealth of, I think, Heather, you said it, of rejuvenation. because of what they bring and that energy and what they bring. So Sophia, I thank you for letting me put you on the spot and for saying what you did. And I wish that all of us have at least one Sophia in our district that we can call on for that reason.
Heather, if you, I'm just going to keep saying it, but if you could put your information in the chat with student advisory boards, so that when, like, I'm copying and pasting into my notes on my phone so that I can know who to call for what. So if you don't mind putting that, that would be great. We are, we're close to time. I want to just thank Peter and his team. I've gotten to work now with Peter and Erin and Haley, who jumped in at the last minute when Erin was on vacation. So kudos to them for doing all the groundwork. This is the fun part. The facilitating is the best part. They have to do the less fun part. I do want to say again to put any topics. I mean, I know there are topics that I'm really interested in that I like to just kind of do ad hoc, not even through this webinar series, but really just call a couple of people and say, hey, do you want to jump on a Zoom call and talk about food insecurity, behavioral health, anti-racism? Those are things that sort of are swirling in my world. And each of you has mentioned things that are resonating with others of you. So please put in there your interests. We'll get a copy of all that chat, so then you could scan down and be reminded, because I think sometimes it's really rich discussion, and then you're going to get off this call and you're going to see you had 37 emails come in the past hour that are urgent and that you have to deal with, and then you're going to forget who the heck Heather Carroll is and what was that Gail woman and what was she talking about. And so you know, as much as you can, capture these people, because someone's going to say something, you're going to be like, I want to follow up. So we'll have that chat to you. We'll also, they recorded all 3 sessions. I have to say, you guys, and Peter is messaging me because we're kind of comparing that. You guys probably win for most engaged and most people contributing to the conversation. So
absolutely.
I want to call that out because that makes it easier on Peter and I, and also gives for a rich discussion. I think we covered more topics than in the other sessions, and that's because you all were willing to sort of jump in. And that doesn't even include all the stuff going on in the chat, which was active the entire time. So all this to say, we will be hosting many more conversations with NSFA officially. We will also, you know, be encouraging you to join the, like the Facebook page for NSFA. It's so underutilized right now. I don't know why that is. We're hoping to get more people on, because that is the place where you'd put all this chat. You could just throw it up on the Facebook NSFA page like, hey, I want to hear what people are doing to get student voice, and then you'll get all the people who are doing that, and then you can kind of coordinate something with that group. So it's a really great and very underutilized resource at the moment.
And we will be issuing an email to that point so that everyone will know, have direct links to our social media channels. If you're not, in particular, the Facebook group is the most active to post a question and use as a listserv. If you're not, just request access to that Facebook group, and Aleka on my team will take a look at the request and approve. And we average like 6 to 8 responses to questions that are posted there. So don't let this conversation, you heard me say that earlier, this is just a piece of the conversation in this Zoom meeting, but don't let the conversation end. Please let it continue, and we're going to do our best to keep it going. And I just, oh, go ahead, Gail.
I'm just going to say one last thing, which is that just a little bit of a personal note. I live in Georgia, where things are just getting worse and worse and worse by the day, and we're making national news for how badly things are going. And I'll just be perfectly honest, like, I have been walking around just with a lot of rage at lack of leadership in our world, and specifically in our state and our country. And so I really personally want to say thank you, because I have really had not had a lot of good hope and a lot of optimism. And so hearing really the inspiring work that you all are doing, it's going to break apart a little of that rage today, hopefully, which my husband, I'm sure, will be happy about. And let in a little bit of sort of the light that is out there. So I really am grateful, because I feel like for all the horrible things and the trauma that our kids are facing, you know, that there are great people across the country in all of our states, you know, desperately working every day to sort of do the best we can in a really horrible situation. So personally, I just need to say, like, you know, you guys let a little bit light in that dark place for me. So thank you for that.
And on behalf of NSFA, I want to thank Gail. As she said earlier, we said, would you be willing to moderate one? And she said yes. And we opened it up to 75 people. It was sold out within 2 hours. We created the second session. We kept it at 55. Gail, would you do that one too? Absolutely. So there was 1 o'clock, there was 3 o'clock. We sold that one out in like an hour and a half. Bye, Aaron. We'll see you. Thank you for joining. And then we created a third one, and the third session was at 11 o'clock this morning. But over 150 people participated on this. And I agree with Gail. You guys burned up the chat room. That's what I was telling Toba, the NSFA president, that, okay, you may have been on the second call with lots of people, but this is the call that burned up the chat room in a very positive way. And I'm going to leave here with some great ideas that I'm going to be taking back. And Sophia, this may not be the last time you hear from me. I'm just saying, I think the whole student advisory thing would be a great discussion in how we get the kids involved, and not just about COVID in general, and to help the foundations, and maybe they become, you never know, after college, working with an education foundation as well, and lay some groundwork there. But I thank Gail truly from the bottom of my heart. This is, you know, to do 3 sessions and remain upbeat and energized. And aside from just a few things that we said in each one, it's all unrehearsed, unscripted. And we hope that you receive some energy from it as well, and some good information. We always ended the other 2 sessions by saying, be safe, be well, and also just laugh at something in the course of the day. We will get through this. It is still 2020, the year of the vision, and we may not know exactly what's to come, but there's going to be something that comes that we can also affect in a positive way. So laugh during the course of a day, and don't let everything get you down. And with that, thank you all. Be well, stay safe,